A routine business flight turns into a nightmare when an explosion tears the plane apart, sending passengers into the ocean. But for Linda, surviving the crash is only the beginning, because the deserted island ahead may reveal a side of her far more dangerous than anyone expected. Linda is returning from a business trip with her coworkers when their plane enters a violent storm. At first, it feels like ordinary turbulence, but the aircraft suddenly begins shaking uncontrollably. Seconds later, a powerful explosion rips through the cabin. Passengers who are not wearing seatbelts are thrown across the plane. The damaged cabin loses pressure. Part of the fuselage breaks open, and several people are sucked into the storm. In the middle of the chaos, the company manager grabs Linda's leg to stop himself from flying out. Another passenger tries reaching Bradley, the company's owner, but Bradley coldly pushes him away. As the man falls, he grabs the manager's leg. The weight pulls them both through the opening, leaving Linda helplessly watching them disappear. Before she can process what happened, the lights go out. The plane loses control and begins diving straight toward the ocean. The aircraft hits the water at an angle that prevents it from exploding immediately. Linda survives the impact, but seawater begins flooding the cabin rapidly. She releases her seatbelt, swims through the wreckage, and escapes before the plane sinks beneath the surface. She is alive, but now she is stranded in the middle of an endless ocean. Then she spots a small island in the distance. Using the last of her strength, Linda swims toward it. By sunrise, she finally reaches the shore and collapses from exhaustion. For the moment, she is safe. But her real nightmare has only just begun. While exploring the beach, Linda notices a man lying unconscious near the water. She rushes toward him and immediately recognizes him. It is Bradley, her boss. He also survived the crash and was carried to the island by the waves. However, one of his legs was badly broken during the fall. Out of everyone on board, Bradley appears to be the only other survivor. Linda should feel relieved, but Bradley is the last person she wanted to find. She had once been the most capable employee in the company's strategy department. Through years of hard work, she earned the former owner's trust and was about to become a manager. Unfortunately, the owner died shortly before her promotion. His son Bradley inherited the company and immediately gave Linda's position to one of his unqualified friends. From that moment, Bradley and his privileged circle constantly humiliated her at work. Linda considers leaving him on the beach. However, she realizes that saving his life could finally earn her the promotion she deserved. She picks up a sharp stone and cuts large banana leaves. Using branches, vines, and a nearby tree for support, she builds a small shelter to protect them from the sun. Next, she digs a hole in the sand, places coconut shells inside it, and covers the area with leaves. Rain begins falling shortly afterward, allowing her to collect enough drinking water. Once the storm passes, Bradley regains consciousness. Linda helps him drink, and after learning that she saved his life, he reluctantly thanks her. She continues proving how valuable she is. Linda starts a fire by rubbing pieces of wood together, catches a fish, and cooks it over the flames. Bradley, who is accustomed to luxury, looks at the plain fish as if it were garbage. But hunger leaves him no choice, so he forces himself to eat it without seasoning. Linda has no problem with the food. In fact, she seems happier on the island than she ever was at the office. There is no executive controlling her, no coworker insulting her, and no one taking credit for her abilities. For the first time, she feels completely free. Several days pass, and the island begins affecting them in opposite ways. Linda appreciates every small victory, while Bradley becomes increasingly desperate to escape. He demands to know why she has not built a large SOS signal on the beach or increased the fire so passing ships can spot them. According to him, rescue should have been her first priority. When Linda refuses to accept the criticism, Bradley accuses her of pretending to help him while deliberately keeping them trapped. Despite being completely helpless with a broken leg, he still treats her work as an obligation. Linda finally understands that saving his life will never make him respect her. He will only recognize her value once he experiences life without her. Without arguing, she stands up and walks away, leaving Bradley alone. At first, he continues insulting her, convinced she will return quickly. Several hours pass, then an entire day. Bradley's confidence slowly disappears, but his pride prevents him from calling for her. That night, another powerful storm strikes the island. The shelter Linda built is destroyed by the wind, leaving Bradley exposed. The following day, the blazing sun makes everything worse. Without water, he becomes severely dehydrated and eventually loses consciousness. Only after allowing him to suffer does Linda return carrying fresh water. Bradley immediately grabs it and drinks without hesitation. The message is now clear. His survival depends entirely on Linda, and he can no longer order her around. Then Bradley notices her preparing a spear. She plans to hunt a dangerous wild boar living inside the jungle. He warns her not to go, not because he suddenly cares about her, but because he knows he will die if she does not return. Linda ignores him and enters the forest. While tracking the animal, the boar suddenly charges from the bushes and launches her into the air. A fallen tree blocks the animal's path, giving Linda enough time to get back on her feet and run. The boar follows her scent, but finds only pieces of torn clothing along the trail. It does not realize that Linda has created a trap. She attacks from the side and drives her spear deep into its body. The wounded boar snaps the weapon and charges again with even greater rage. As it reaches her, Linda raises a sharpened wooden stake. After a brutal struggle, she kills the animal. When Linda returns carrying the boar's severed head, Bradley is horrified. For the first time, he understands that the employee he once mocked is far stronger and far more dangerous than he ever imagined. From that day forward, he becomes afraid of her. While searching the jungle several days later, Linda discovers a waterfall filled with clean drinking water. She is relieved that collecting rainwater is no longer necessary. But her excitement quickly fades when she hears an engine in the distance. Linda runs toward the sound and sees a boat passing near the island. For a moment, hope fills her eyes. She prepares to shout for help, but suddenly stops. Leaving the island means returning to the same miserable life. She would once again work beneath arrogant executives, tolerate daily insults, and sacrifice her freedom for a company that never respected her. Here, Linda controls everything. No one gives her orders. No one questions her ability. She can live entirely by her own rules. She makes her decision. Instead of calling for help, Linda hides and watches the boat disappear into the distance. When she returns to camp, she tells Bradley nothing. Unlike Linda, Bradley has no intention of spending the rest of his life on the island. 2 weeks in the wilderness have already pushed him beyond his limit. He suggests building a raft so they can reach passing boats or move closer to shipping routes. Linda immediately refuses, claiming the journey would be too dangerous. Bradley finally loses his temper. Since the crash, Linda has rejected every suggestion he has made, and he can no longer tolerate being powerless. He decides to separate from her, establish his own camp, and build a raft without her assistance. The moment he begins working alone, he realizes how badly he underestimated her. He cannot even start a proper fire. His injured leg prevents him from traveling far, and collecting food is nearly impossible. He uses coconut shells to gather rainwater, and somehow constructs a weak shelter. Then he writes help across the sand, and waits for someone to notice. 2 days pass without a single boat appearing. Driven by hunger, Bradley tries eating insects he finds nearby. The moment he swallows them, the taste makes him vomit. Meanwhile, Linda sits comfortably at her camp, enjoying fresh meat and other food she gathered herself. Watching her eat finally destroys what remains of Bradley's pride. Ignoring the pain in his leg, he crawls toward her, drops to his knees, and apologizes. Linda laughs at his broken attitude before allowing him to return. Bradley accepts the humiliation because he has no other option. Still, beneath his obedient behavior, he quietly waits for the right opportunity to regain control. Nearly half a month passes, and his injury begins improving. Linda takes him toward the island's highest point. The climb is difficult, but the view from the top is breathtaking. She warns him that the beautiful landscape hides several deadly threats. Linda picks berry-like fruits from a nearby plant and explains that their poison can numb the human body. To prove it, she applies a small amount of juice to her arm. Within moments, red rashes appear across her skin. Farther ahead, she points toward a group of rocks shaped like an X. Everything beyond that marker is covered with sharp thorns and poisonous vines. She strictly warns Bradley never to search that area for supplies. Her warning gives Bradley an idea. On the way back, he pretends to be exhausted and sits near the poisonous berries. When Linda looks away, he secretly gathers several of them. Before he can complete his plan, the ground beneath Linda collapses. The surface looked solid, but underneath it was hollow and unstable. Linda falls into the opening, and Bradley immediately tries pulling her out. He may hate her, but he cannot stand there and watch her die. After struggling with his injured leg, Bradley finally saves her. For the first time, Linda begins trusting him without demanding anything in return. A few days later, another violent storm reaches the island. Their shelter near the beach is destroyed, and falling trees make the area even more dangerous. Fortunately, they had already discovered a cave nearby. They rush inside before the storm becomes worse. Both are completely soaked, and the temperature continues dropping. To avoid freezing, they remove their wet clothes and sleep close together for warmth. The experience changes something between them. Linda gradually develops feelings for Bradley. By this point, Bradley has also learned how to identify the poisonous plants Linda showed him. Wanting to prove himself and thank her for everything she has done, he offers to prepare dinner that night. Linda sees no reason to refuse and allows him to cook, but she has no idea what Bradley is secretly planning. To Linda's surprise, Bradley's meal actually tastes delicious. But after taking only a few bites, she suddenly becomes dizzy. Her vision blurs, her body loses strength, and within seconds, she collapses onto the ground. Bradley does not even turn around to check on her. Instead, he rushes into the jungle and returns moments later, dragging a wooden raft toward the shore. He had already realized that Linda never intended to let him leave the island. So, while pretending to obey her, he secretly built an escape raft and waited for the perfect opportunity. By mixing the poisonous berries into her food, Bradley finally created that opportunity. He pushes the poorly constructed raft into the water and begins paddling away without looking back. For the first time since the crash, he believes he is free. But the ocean quickly proves him wrong. Before Bradley can travel far, a massive wave smashes into the raft and breaks it apart. An even larger wave follows, dragging him beneath the surface. Fortunately, he is still close to the island. After recovering from the poison, Linda spots him in the water and pulls him back onto the beach. When Bradley regains consciousness, he immediately begins apologizing. Linda says nothing and calmly hands him a cooked crab. Hungry and terrified, he eats it without hesitation. A few moments later, his mouth begins feeling strangely numb. The sensation spreads through his arms, legs, and eventually his entire body. Bradley can no longer move, and panic fills his face. Linda finally explains what is happening. The crab was covered with venom from a blue-ringed octopus, a toxin powerful enough to paralyze someone within seconds while leaving them completely conscious. She has no intention of killing him. She only wants to teach him a lesson he will never forget. Linda pulls out a knife, heats the blade over the fire, and removes Bradley's pants. Unable to move, he watches in horror as she slowly approaches and gestures toward what she plans to do. Bradley becomes convinced she is about to mutilate him. Linda suddenly swings the knife, and blood sprays across his neck. Then she smiles and reveals the truth. The blade never touched him. She had cut open a rat beside his body, using its blood to make the threat appear real. The entire performance was designed to terrify Bradley and ensure he never tried betraying her again. Between the knife in her hand and the terrifying calmness on her face, Bradley's remaining confidence disappears. From that moment forward, he follows every order without questioning her. But Linda's control over the island does not last much longer. One day, while collecting supplies, she hears another engine approaching from the ocean. This time, the person on board has already seen her. As the boat moves closer, Linda recognizes the passenger. It is Jenny, Bradley's fiancée. The official rescue teams may have abandoned the search, but Jenny never gave up. She continued exploring the area with a local guide, convinced that Bradley could still be alive. Now, after weeks of searching, she has finally reached the island. Linda forces herself to smile and pretends to be relieved by Jenny's arrival. With no believable way to hide the truth, she admits that Bradley survived the crash. But Linda still refuses to leave. Now that Jenny and the guide know both survivors are alive, Linda realizes her new life is in danger. Only two outsiders know the truth, and Linda decides that neither of them can be allowed to leave. She claims to know a shortcut toward Bradley's camp and leads them deep into the jungle. Eventually, she brings them near the unstable cliff where she once nearly fell to her death. Linda stops and pretends to tie her shoelace, telling Jenny and the guide to continue walking. The moment Jenny steps forward, the ground collapses beneath her. She disappears into the pit. Linda planned for both of them to fall, but only Jenny is trapped. The guide is still alive, forcing Linda to decide what to do next. Sometime later, she returns to Bradley alone. What happened to Jenny and the guide remains unclear, but Linda is visibly shaken. For the first time, even she cannot believe how far she has gone to protect her freedom. Bradley soon approaches and asks her to come into the jungle to gather food. Linda claims she is sick and refuses. Noticing her unusual behavior, Bradley quietly takes the knife and enters the forest alone. He decides to hunt and eventually spots a young wild boar digging through the dirt. Bradley slowly moves closer, preparing to attack. Then he notices something sticking out of the ground beside the animal. It is a human hand. When he gets closer, his blood runs cold. The engagement ring on the finger belongs to Jenny, the same ring Bradley personally gave her. In that instant, he understands what Linda has done. Consumed by rage, Bradley races back toward camp. Linda sees him approaching and immediately senses danger. Holding up Jenny's ring, Bradley demands to know why she killed her. Linda realizes there is no point hiding the truth, but she still claims Jenny's death was an accident. Bradley does not believe a word. As the confrontation escalates, Linda slowly reaches toward her waist for the knife, but Bradley has already taken it. For the first time, Linda is unarmed. She turns and runs into the jungle, with Bradley following close behind. When she realizes she cannot outrun him forever, Linda quickly prepares another trap. Bradley notices her shadow behind a tree and moves in for the attack. But when he reaches the spot, he finds only Linda's abandoned shoes. The laces have been removed. Before he can understand why, Linda attacks from behind and wraps the shoelaces tightly around his neck. Bradley struggles to breathe as she pulls with all her strength. He desperately tries breaking free, but Linda refuses to release him. During the struggle, the knife slips from Bradley's hand and lands on the ground. Using the last of his strength, he grabs Linda by the hair, throws her over his shoulder, and slams her into the mud. Bradley climbs on top of her and pushes her face into the wet ground, trying to suffocate her. Linda reaches blindly through the dirt and manages to grab the fallen knife. But when she clears the mud from her eyes, Bradley has already disappeared. Instead of continuing the fight, he runs toward the poisonous section of the island, the area Linda had strictly forbidden him from entering. Linda watches him leave, but does not follow. She quietly returns to camp. Bradley continues running, expecting poisonous vines or deadly thorns to appear at any moment, but nothing happens. Then he looks ahead and freezes. Hidden between two enormous rock formations is a luxurious modern villa. The discovery proves that the island was never deserted. It is someone's private property. Filled with new hope, Bradley rushes toward the house and screams for help. No one responds. He notices the front door is unlocked and cautiously enters. Inside, he turns on the lights and searches every room for supplies or some way to contact the outside world. Then he finds a refrigerator filled with modern drinks and bottled water. Nearly collapsing from thirst, Bradley grabs a bottle and begins drinking. Suddenly, Linda's voice echoes through the villa's speaker system. As she speaks, every piece of the mystery falls into place. There was never a poisonous region beyond the X-shaped rocks. Linda invented the warning to keep Bradley away from the villa. She finally reveals the full truth. The boat she saw earlier was not a random rescue vessel. It was a monthly supply boat delivering food and equipment to the property. By watching it, Linda discovered the hidden villa. She later found the access code near the entrance and began secretly using the house whenever Bradley was not watching. The villa's real owner rarely visited the island, as long as Linda cleaned everything afterward. No one suspected that another person had been living there. She had fresh food, clean water, electricity, and every modern comfort she needed. Her life on the island had been carefully controlled. Jenny's unexpected arrival threatened to expose everything. Linda claims that the situation forced her to eliminate Bradley's fiancé before she could bring the authorities back. Bradley is horrified. He searches through the darkened rooms, trying to locate the control system, but cannot find where Linda is speaking from. Then the situation becomes even worse. Linda enters the villa carrying a hunting rifle she found inside the house. The moment Bradley sees the weapon, he drops to his knees and begs for his life. He promises he will never attempt to escape again. He even claims that he wants to remain on the island and spend the rest of his life with her. Bradley tells Linda that their time together changed him and that he has genuinely fallen in love with her. To convince her, he begins describing the intimate and meaningful moments they shared. For a second, Linda appears affected by his words. Then, she notices something behind him. A decorative bull's head is mounted on the wall, but one of its horns is missing. Linda instantly realizes Bradley is hiding the horn behind his back and only pretending to surrender. She reaches for a nearby golf club. At the same moment, Bradley grabs the rifle and aims it at her. He pulls the trigger. Nothing happens. The gun is empty. Linda had anticipated his move and removed the ammunition beforehand. Before Bradley can react, she swings the golf club and strikes him. She attacks repeatedly, refusing to give him another chance to escape. The final blow kills him instantly. With Bradley gone, Linda carefully cleans the entire villa and removes every trace of what happened. When the supply boat eventually returns, She presents herself as the sole survivor of the plane crash. She transforms the entire story into an unbelievable survival miracle. The world celebrates Linda as a courageous woman who endured weeks alone on a deserted island. Her story makes her famous, and the attention eventually makes her extremely wealthy. Everyone believes Linda survived the island. No one realizes that the island was the place where she finally became who she truly wanted to be.